Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing our match on game 8 between Paul Morphy and Johann Jakob Löwenthal. So far things are not looking great for our good friend Johann Jakob, as this is game 8 and he's losing the match 7-1. But it's, still early, a lot can happen. And here we have one very excellent game that really shows us how complicated and yet simple chess is. Or rather, maybe it would be better to say how simple yet complicated. Seems the same, but it's really not. So without further ado, let's check it out. Morphy with the white pieces opens with e4. Sorry about that. We have e5 by Löwenthal, and we have the same line they played in the previous game, only now with colors reversed. Knight f3, d6, Philidor's defense is on the board, and d4. We have captures, queen captures, and then we said that knight to c6 was pretty much an automatic nowadays, and the Morphy preferred bishop to e6 for whoever knows what reason. But with bishop to d7 by Löwenthal, he thinks that the bishop should be on this diagonal, and that's how he is going to play it. So Morphy continues development, bishop e3, we have knight to f6 and knight to c3 now. We have bishop to e7 and now bishop to c4. Again, continuing development, leaving options for both castling king side and queen side. And it is as of move 7 that this position has never been reached again. We have knight to c6, finally attacking the queen, queen back to d2, and now knight to e5, forcing a trade here unless Morphy is, willing to go back with bishop to e2. But Morphy says not a problem, we're going to trade, captures, and here castles king side, which is very interesting, as Löwenthal is most probably going to castle kingside. One would think that someone of, Morphy style would castle queenside here. But okay, we have castles kingside by both of them, and now f4. Attacking this e5 pawn, wanting to open up some files, and here knight to g4 would put a lot of pressure on Morphy's bishop. He would have to, if Löwenthal wanted, he could win the bishop pair here. However, he decides to go bishop to d6 instead, and now Morphy extends his pawn all the way to f5. And okay, bishop to c6, now with a double attack on the e4 pawn, and queen to e2. And here Morphy sets a very, very interesting trap, and this is what I enjoy most in Morphy's games, where it's hard to say whether his opponents really understood what was happening here, but they avoided grabbing the pawn, unless they're like Thomas Wilson Barnes, but that's a different story. So here, what happens if you capture the pawn is that you just get annihilated. But I will show it. For example, knight captures, bishop captures. It seems like you won a pawn. However, queen to g4 attacks the bishop here, and also something else. But what do you do here? Bishop captures on c2, and now not f6 right away, because that just allows the bishop to go back with bishop to g6. First, rook to f2. This is the star move, attacking that. Also, rook a to c1 is good, just attacking that bishop and not allowing it to remain on this diagonal, guarding the g6 square. So rook f2, and now black just loses a bishop. Unless you want to move the bishop, for example, bishop to a4. Now comes f6, threatening checkmate, g6 defending, and now queen h4, with the idea of this checkmate. And there really is no good defense here. You could try something like king h8, hoping to maybe get the rook in to prevent it, but it doesn't matter. Rook f3 comes, and now the rook also joins the party. And there is no defense against both of these checkmates. And there's even a really funny checkmate, one of my favorite checkmates. For example, if black only saw this threat and plays rook to g8, now you can even sacrifice your queen, and it's a very nice checkmate because the pawn covers the g7 square. One might that you might want to remember, as it could happen very often in your own games now that you know it exists. So here, after queen to e2, of course Löwenthal didn't go for the pawn, as he calculated everything, and he played h6. Just taking away the g5 square from Morphy's pieces, and Morphy continues rook a to d1. He wants to trade a lot of pieces on the d5 square and doesn't want to mess up his pawn structure. So queen e7, getting the queen away from the d file, and bishop to d5 now by Morphy. We have a capture fest on the d5 square, captures, we have captures and captures, now leaving the pawn structure intact. And now at some point, of course, Löwenthal will want to trade off the dark square bishops, because Morphy's dark square bishop is a good bishop. He has these pawns on light squares, he can use it for attack, and Well, this bishop is not all that great because of the e5 pawn here on a dark square, and at some point you're probably going to play c6, kick the rook away, and trade the bishops off via bishop c5. So first f6, one of the positions where it's actually okay to play f6, and now queen to g4 by Morphy. Again, now you can threaten some rook lifts, rook f3, rook h3, maybe with some ideas here. But okay, c6, pushing the rook back to d3, and now bishop to c5. Of course, Löwenthal wants to trade off the dark square bishops with queen to g3, and now rook a to d8, offering to trade everything off and to go into a king and pawn endgame. And Morphy says, alright, rook f to d1, and now rook captures on d3. We have rook captures, and now the tricky rook to d8 by Löwenthal, allowing bishop captures on c5, but luckily it will come with check. So bishop captures on c5, queen captures on c5 with check, so you will have time to trade here. Queen to f2, offering a queen trade, captures with check, captures, rook captures, and pawn captures. And now Morphy improved his pawn presence in the center, but Löwenthal reacts properly. Now Morphy, of course, as he does have a backwards pawn here, wants to play king to e3, push d4, and of course Löwenthal stops that. And now we're going to see, in those days, in 1857, how they played the end game. Or is it 1858? I just had a small blockade. Let me just check this. Yeah, 1858, sorry about that. So here we're going to see how they treat the king and pawn endgame, and it's very interesting how they treat it because, well, you'll just see. Here Morphy goes g4, which is a fine move, but usually in a king and pawn endgame you first want to increase your king presence as much as possible. So here, if you could somehow reach the g6 square, that'd be great. But okay. Morphy goes for g4 instead. We have king to f8, and now a4 by Morphy. We have b6, and now king to g3. Now Morphy starts bringing his king into the game. We have king to f7, king h4, king back to f8, and now king to h5 by Morphy. Here we have king back to f7, and now we get this very interesting position where Löwenthal decided that, okay, I'm not allowing your king to touch the g6 square. However, the position is completely lost for black. But you have to pause the video and win the game for Morphy in order for the game to be winning. So while I give you a couple of seconds, try and solve this position, you know, do your thing. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not touching the B pawn. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's either h3 or h4, or even king to h4 is possible. You'll still be winning, but king h4 is only winning because you will again be able to put your king to h5 and push h3 or h4, so disregard that move. But here Morphy played the very interesting b3, and this is a problem. This is a problem if you're a beginner and you're, you know, only starting to enjoy king and pawn endgames. You do not want to squander away pawn moves. In a king and pawn endgame, a pawn move, when you have it and when your opponent doesn't have it, it means everything. And we're going to show why here. Here, h3 or h4 is winning because, for example, h4, black now can only wait and hopefully not allow white to get access to the g6 square. So a6, let's say, and now Morphy continues with the g5 as he prepared it. Captures, captures, you're going to go b5, and now just b3, or you can trade and play b3. This is why you wait to have this b3 move when you need it. You could also play captures here and then also get access to the h6 square. A lot of ideas are possible, but just to play this simple b3 move, captures, captures, and now let's say a5, and now you're going to capture on f6. So we reach the same idea, only through a different move order, captures and king to h6. And now you still need to reach the g6 square, king f8, and now you're going to go king to g6. And after king to e7, you're going to go king g7. And next move, your opponent doesn't have any pawn moves. It'd be great if he did, but he doesn't. And he will have to move the king, and you're going to start gobbling up the pawns. You're going to create a passed pawn, queen the pawn, and win the game. However, Morphy played b3 here, and now it's a different story. So it seems like everything is the same. You will be able to reach the g6 square even sooner. But king f8, Morphy reaches the g6 square, and now king to g8. We have h3 by Morphy. Going for the same idea with h4 now shows a bit problematic for Morphy, because king f8, g5, you're going to play captures, captures, And now after f captures on g5, king captures king f7, and you again have no access to the g6 square, and now you have problems. There's no way to continue, and it's just gonna be a draw. So here Morphy tried waiting on it with h3, but now comes king to f8. We have h4, king back to g8, and now finally g5. So everything is exactly the same, but Morphy's pawn is already on b3 instead of on b2, as it should have been all along. We have h captures, and now f captures on g5. King captures and king f7, again not allowing Morphy to reach the g6 square. So king h4, we have king to e7, and now king to g4. We have king to f6, and now king to h5. A bit of a triangulation party between the two of them. We have a6, preparing some pawn pushes here, but just king h4. We have g6, now offering some pawn trades, and a5 by Morphy. It's all good because these two squares are covered, so it's fine. We have b captures on a5, and now f captures on g6. King captures and king g4. Morphy gains the opposition, even though for the moment he's down a pawn. We have a4, returning the pawn, so b captures and now a5. It's white to move, white needs to break opposition. So king f3, and now king to f6. White unable to gain opposition here. So king f2, and now king to f7. We have king to g3, and now king to g7, grabbing the long opposition. King f2, king f6, we're having king to g1 by Morphy. Here, any move, king e2, king f3, king g3, everything is fine for Morphy. But Morphy, probably angry with himself that he didn't win that position. He probably played that b3 move because he thought like, yeah, I mean, this Löwenthal dude, of course, he's going to lose this, whatever I play, so I'm just going to play any move. But then Löwenthal got an equal position, and it's hard to say. Morphy was probably angry. He played king to g1, wanting to confuse Löwenthal even further, but now the position is lost for Morphy. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for Löwenthal now while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the long opposition. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's king to g5. And now the thing is, you have access to both of these squares, so you will be able to again gain opposition. So king g2, and now king to f4 or g4. Doesn't really matter because it all comes down to a pawn move. King to f4, we have king to f2, and now white seems to have the opposition, but black has the pawn move, c4. And now everything white plays loses, so Morphy capture doesn't really matter, otherwise you just capture. So d captures on c5, c4, creating a passed pawn for Morphy, but it doesn't matter, king captures. And now if pawn push, you are in time to stop the pawn. King e2 by Morphy, king d4, we have king to f3, and now captures on c4. King e4, king b4, captures and captures. Here Morphy played king to d4, and of course Löwenthal played king to b4. And it was in this position on move 59 that Paul Charles Morphy resigned the game, and a second victory in the match for Johann Jakob Löwenthal, where, you know, it was really crazy. So Morphy had a winning position, and then he didn't, and then he wanted to win either way, and then he lost. Something that happens to all of us, regardless of who we are and how good we are at chess. And here, of course, it's completely winning for black. If you don't believe me, I'm going to show you why. Of course, black just wants the queen, the pawn, and there is no way for white to stop it. White could stop it if black would just allow the king to reach the pawn, but black will just follow the white king. King here, take away all of these squares from the white king, and then queen the pawn. So it's a very easy win. So, you might be thinking, as some people sometimes comment, like, why are you showing us games like this? We like to see games where Morphy sacrifices everything and just, you know, wins, and, you know, he's the best. Well, of course, I mean, I enjoy games like that as well. But it wouldn't do justice to the Saga. I mean, we need to show all the games. Like, if it's a complete snooze fest, I'm gonna skip it. But this wasn't. I mean, I enjoyed this rather, you know, a peculiar pawn push, and you know, one day when this whole situation in the world clears up and you're back with your friends at the bar and the library, they're gonna be saying like, oh, that Morphy, he was like a, you know, total beast, he just obliterated everyone, and you're just gonna be like, yeah, but remember that game 8 against Löwenthal in London in 1858, where he made the pawn push on the wrong side of the board, and you know, it just leads to higher quality conversation if we also cover games like this. So yeah. Once again, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Krasen Kotorov, David Kimura, Christopher Reynolds, Andreas Weidinga, and Ivy. Ivy made a contribution with a special message because last year, on her 1-year anniversary with Douglas, he made a contribution to a channel with a shout out to her, and now she makes a contribution with a shout out for Douglas, saying, Douglas, Ivy is your checkmate for life, and she ordered you a gift from my merch shop that will arrive very, very soon, hopefully, if they don't mess something up. So yeah, thank you, Ivy, thank you, everyone, and yeah. Once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the good stuff, the Morphy Saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.